This program deals with themes of an adult nature and is intended for a mature audience.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on the KTPF Community Talk Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for our new weekly radio shows. To accompany the KTPF Community Talk Show, we now have our own free magazine to view online or download for free. Visit our website for more details. Also, the KTPF Community Talk Show is supported by Phenomenon Magazine and Beyond Parazine, available online now. The comments and views expressed on the KTPF Community Talk Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the views of ourselves or of our sponsors.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
They've landed.
You're in the right place. Online, on the web, and on air. All over the world.
Talk radio.
You hear us, we hear you.
Yeah, good evening everybody, and welcome to another edition of the KTPF Community Talk Show, live and uncensored from Manchester at www.ktpf.co.uk. Broadcasting on KTPF Radio, Worsley Radio, and on DM Radio in New Jersey, USA. And for our mobile listeners, you can now listen in at gotoit.link/KTPF Mobile. Those that are our regular listeners, if you still want to watch us, you can go to our Ustream link, which is in the chat room as we speak. Okay, my name is Suzanne.
And I'm Steve.
And over in Essex, we have our regular co-host, parapsychologist and historian, Mr. Andy Mercer. Good evening, Andy.
Hello, guys. How's it going?
Not too bad, not too bad. Have
Good
you had
stuff.
a good week?
Yes, not too bad. Sorting a few bits out. Obviously, Christmas very close by, so my work is a little quieter than it used to be. But that's fine. I'm actually using a new setup at home here with a different microphone, so hopefully it'll be clearer. And we've also seemed to have eliminated those annoying dropouts from Skype, so everything's looking fine and dandy.
Yes, and I've just noticed I forgot to start the encoders for DM and Worsley, so I'm terribly sorry about that. But you haven't missed much, just an introduction.
Yeah, just a quick hello.
Yes, sorry about that. Now,
Can I also say that for those of you that are watching us, don't forget to use the normal chat room.
yes, and on the subject of the chat room, as I was about to say, we have updated our chat room, so you can now connect with Facebook, Twitter, Google, Yahoo, or register to Chatwing yourself. Okay?
Yahoo?
Chatwing.
So
Yahoo.
like, so Yahoo?
Yahoo, yeah. Apparently you can do it by Yahoo.
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 Poo.
So pull up a chair and relax with us while we bring you a show full of the supernatural, the paranormal, and other strange phenomena. Okay.
I thought for a minute it was on the wrong show then. I thought it was at the hop. Yahoo!
Now, as always, we would like to start by acknowledging our listeners this evening and to remind you that if you have any questions for us or our guests, you too can get involved with tonight's show via our live interactive chat room, as we've just mentioned. Okay, so a big hello to DM Radio in New Jersey and also our Worsley Radio listeners as well. So welcome to the show. Don't forget, if you've missed the show, then you can listen to our last 4 podcasts at on our menu bar on our website. Just click on podcast, or they are available at the YouTube channel at KTPF Community Show, along with past shows dating back to March 2012. Okay, so what's on tonight? Tonight we have John Fraser. Now, John became interested in the paranormal as a teenager and has been actively investigating the subject for well over 20 years. He has been heavily involved in the Ghost Club, following correspondence with Peter Underwood on mutual research, including the famous Sandwood Bay Ghost. And as a member of ASAP, that's the Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena, he participated in some long-running regression experiments. John went on to become Vice Chair of Investigations at the Ghost Club and is currently on the Council for the Spontaneous Cases Community of the Society for Psychical Research. John is also the author of Ghost Hunting, a survivor's guide published in 2010 by the History Press, as well as a regular contributor to the Fortean Times and other paranormal magazines. He has also appeared on television in the UK and in Japan, which explores on documentaries which explore unexplained phenomena. So that's what we've got on tonight, and Andy's going to be doing a segment in the interview with him on the cage, aren't you, Andy?
Yes, if people remember from previous shows some time back, we actually did a live show, didn't we, from the cage to an investigation. I was there with John Blackburn of what was then Mysteria, now Enigma experiments, and we actually somewhat simulcast, shall we say, an investigation live, as well as the usual cameras that the woman who owns the place has got set up in the building. So, yeah. And I've been there more recently, much more quieter in terms of fewer people involved in investigation, and there's definitely something to the place. I mean, I've spoken to John. Obviously, I met John Fraser at the Vampire Symposium in the summer, Highgate Symposium rather, and we talked a bit then about the cage, but we've corresponded since, and he's got some interesting views about the place. I think we would agree that it's certainly haunted, but the nature of what goes on there is something that needs investigating in itself, shall we say.
Yes, and talking about the Vampire Symposium, David and Della have joined us in the chat room.
Ooh.
Good evening,
Yeah,
guys.
they said they would do, as they're friends of John, of course.
Yes, and
welcome to the show, guys.
And do you realise that live broadcast was over 2 years ago?
Was it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, blimey. That's flown by.
It has flown by, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
As you can hear, Steve is still coughing and spluttering. We've found out that it's not a cold he's got. It's actually, well, it started off as a bit of a cold, but it's affected your asthma, hasn't it?
It has.
Steve?
It's gone on my
on your chest. So,
do you realise when you said he was a member of ASAP, I thought he was going to be as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Oh, very funny.
I would just point out they call themselves ASAP to not have that confusion, rather than ASAP.
It's still spelt the same.
Oh
It's
yeah, well,
not.
no, there's no S in there. Stephen, go back to
It's got
school.
2 S's.
Yes.
ASAP.
As soon as sodding possible.
Oh, that'll do. Yay.
I don't know. The Christmas jokes are coming out
When
already.
do you want us to investigate? ASAP.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
Well,
for those who are concerned, sodding is only a small lump of earth. It doesn't mean anything more than that. It's not a rude word.
right, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to hand you over to Steve to start us off with the observations.
Oh, don't do that. Right, here we go. Let me have a quick cough and I shall be with you. Was that quick enough? Okay. Using a high spectrum camera, paranormal investigators have captured what they believe is an anomaly at St Bartholomew's Cemetery in Sydney's west. And it's an image that will undoubtedly have skeptics scoffing and believers transfixed. Fueling the skeptics' cynicism, the image was captured on Halloween night. I heard that, Andy.
I didn't say anything.
When one of the regular tours was held at the Prospect Cemetery, known to locals as St Bart's. The anomaly was snapped at the burial place of explorer William Lawson, and early settlers, many believe the cemetery of the church opened in 1841 was destroyed by fire in 1989 is haunted. For members of the Sydney Southwest Paranormal Investigators team were near the grave when they heard a whining sound, as they often do on the tours across Sydney, and the team took about 300 photos. The usual image was captured on the 209th frame, but it was not until film was developed that the very large anomaly was captured. There you go, guys. People are still using 35mm. They get proper developments on them. We're not claiming that the spirit of a human being. We're just saying that this is an anomaly. The reason we know that it was there was only 4 of us, and it was quite controlled environmental. It's opened more questions. There have been sightings here before. The tour guide and the local historian Hazel McGann is unsure of whose image it is, but she is adamant about our aversion to the section of the graveyard. I closed down and I kept having horrendous feelings near where that photo was taken, Megan says. Well, the paranormal group said they think it's a figure that's moving towards them. It has legs, arms, and we think it's male, lead investigator Kellen Ryan said. But Megan says that she had a scout group who once saw her being followed by a short man as she walked in the direction of the M4 motorway. Her research revealed that Thomas James Willis, aka the Penrith jockey, born in 1834 in Middlesex, England, could haunt the site. Willis's mother Mary is buried under the tree where the anomaly was captured, but Megan believes the spirit is there because of his daughter Emily, who died in 1863, and she was just 3 years old. Many have also spotted a girl who appears to be the same age darting towards the M4 motorway. She's a very naughty girl, very much a prankster, says Megan. She can never leave the site, I can tell you that. Members of the paranormal team, which has ventured out of St Bart's since August, say they spotted a girl with a similar description running around, only to see her disappear shortly afterwards. I think that this place is more investigate and more questions. Ryan says we've had some interesting encounters there. This one we would say is not actually... Put my teeth back in. This is not actually haunted, but intelligent haunted. They know that you're there. One team member had the visual sightings. We get together, and our batteries drain. We put out my equipment, and St Barth is a very interesting place. I think St Barth is having a go at my bleeding tongue today. Well, looking at the image,
Yeah.
I would say it does look male, mainly because of the size of it. It doesn't seem to have any clothes on. And to me, it looks like it's walking away from them, not towards them. What do you think, guys?
I'm struggling to see anything in this picture.
Which picture are you looking at?
I'm looking at the one on the... Oh, there! So I was looking at the one. The one just beneath it.
He's found it.
Yes, I can see that now. I don't know. It's very, very thin arms and not really obvious sitting ahead. I don't know. To me, it looks like just a blurred image of someone walking past a bit too quickly. To be honest with you, but I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, as I say, there was only 4 of them there at the time, and they knew where everybody was, so they're pretty adamant that it wasn't one of them, even if it was something else.
Well, if it's either that, or it's a Slender Man on a striptease.
It could be the Slender Man. You never know. But I was glad to hear that they actually had the film developed, so they must be using 35mm instead of digital, which a lot of people tend to use these days.
Which is never a good idea, as we know. It's so easy to create accidentally anomalous things that aren't paranormal, and of course it's quite easy to do it deliberately as well. So.
This is true. Mm-hmm. Here we go. Here comes the next one, and hopefully my tongue will work this time. Here we go. A Roman sword discovered off Oak Island radically suggests that ancient mariners visited the New World 1,000 years before Columbus. Having said that, it's also rumoured that an English seaman was there before Columbus. Not particularly Oak Island, but on the Americas. Researchers investigating the mysterious Oak Island located on the south shore of Nova Scotia, Canada, have made a startling announcement regarding the discovery of a Roman ceremonial sword, and what is believed to be a Roman shipwreck, radically suggesting that ancient mariners visited North America more than 1,000 years before Columbus. Evidence of the finding, which was exclusively revealed to Johnston Press and published in the Boston Standard, was uncovered by researchers involving in the History Channel's series Curse of Oak Island, which detailed efforts of 2 brothers from Michigan as they attempt to solve the mystery of the Oak Island treasure and discover historical artifacts believed to be concealed on the island. John Houghton Pulitzer, lead researcher and the historic investigator, along with academics from the Ancient Artifact Preservation Society, I've compiled a paper on the finding, which is scheduled to be published in full in early 2016. Rings come down. The Mystery of Oak Island is home to one of the biggest treasure hunts in history, which began in 1795, and when 18-year-old Daniel McGuinness saw lights coming from the island out of curiosity, he went searching for the lights and discovered a clearing in the southeastern end of the island. Within the clearing was a circular depression, and nearby a tackle block hung from a tree. McGuinness and several friends returned to the area and began excavating the depression. With a few feet beneath the surface, they discovered a layer of flagstone, and the pit walls had markings from a pick. Approximately every 10 feet, 3 meters, they found a layer of logs, and excavating the 30 feet beneath the surface, McGuinness and his friends abandoned the excavation without ever finding anything of significance. And for those of you who may remember Oak Island but can't place it, the part of it is known as the Money Pit.
Yes, you've been watching that, haven't you?
Yes, I love watching it. Andy's another fan there. I'm actually waiting for it to come back.
I think it's due back, actually.
It's back.
Oh,
It's
it's
been
already
on
back?
about 3 episodes now, season 3.
Oh, right.
About 3 or 4 have been on. So yeah. It's been back
wasn't
like
informed.
Wednesdays, 10
It
o'clock.
wasn't informed. I'm going to have a look back on and see if we can find the old issues.
Yes. Well,
Wednesdays, 10 o'clock, I think it is the time. But certainly Wednesday nights.
I
right.
think because the last time that I saw it, they were having their break, but they were on the edge of making a big discovery, wasn't they? But
Well, I'll say no more about what's happened so far because you've obviously not seen it. But there's been at least 2 or 3 episodes so far of season 3.
cool.
Right. Well, is that your last one?
I have one more.
Go on then.
I have one more.
I hate to tell you this, but I'm being wound up in the chat room.
Oh yeah, who's winding you up?
John Fraser, of all people,
Why?
telling me he's not paid his phone bill, and that maybe we should do the interview by carrier pigeon.
Oh, I love it. Maybe we should do it through Psychic and get Andy to do it.
Yeah, never know.
Okay, here we go. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Yeti. You've most likely heard of these cryptids, but what about the Yowie?
The Yowie.
The Yowie. Meet the man who claims who has not only encountered the mythical Yowie, an ape-like Australian creature similar to Bigfoot, but also that the terrifying monster almost killed him not once, but twice. Why did the idiot go back? That's what I want to know. Okay, Yowie researcher Dean Harrison has described his 2 close for comfort encounters with the mysterious creature, once in Oamaru in the Gold Coast hinterland, and again in Kilkivan near Gympie, according to a report in the news.com. The scary thing is that Yowies have a massive advantage over us because of their eyesight in the dark. The thing that knocked me over ran down a hill in pitch darkness past obstacles, trees, logs. The angles were so steep, but it sprinted down. It didn't miss a beat. The one that chased me at Oamaru was the same. He was reported to have said. The Yowie is Australia's very own Bigfoot. They are reputed to live in the wilderness and witness, whatever that is. But witnesses claim to have seen them in all states and territories in the Australian mainland. Ipswich, West Brisbane, is now considered a Yowie hotspot among researchers, according to the report. The first reported sighting of the Yowie was believed to be in 1882 by an armchair naturalist, Henry James McCooey, somewhere between Ulladulla and Bateman's Bay on the north-southwest coast. Oh, New South Wales coast, I do beg your pardon. Those Yowies, like Bigfoot or the Yeti, are considered the stuff of legends by many scientists, and there is a significant community of believers, such as Harrison, who are firm believers and in the 2-meter tall creatures not only exist, but they're also roaming freely in the Australian bush. Another witness, Tony Duffy, says, in the last 12 months I had had close encounters with Yowies on at least 7 occasions. These creatures must be protected and respected. Yeah, it was clearly the missing link that scientists have been looking for decades. I believe they are the greatest discovery in history of natural science. Former Queensland Senator Bill O'Gee has also claimed to have seen a hairy ape-like thing that probably would have stood about 8 feet tall, that's 2.4 metres, at a campsite on the Gold Coast hinterland in the 1970s. Though there is no irrefutable proof that Yarras exist, Professor Bill Lawrence from James Cook University says we shouldn't be so quick to dismiss the dedicated work of cryptozoologists such as Dean Harrison as they hunt down these elusive beasts. While it is tempting to giggle, occasionally cryptobiologists have many valuable discoveries, he said. In 2013, reporting two Lazarus species such as the Mindoro fruit bat, the Laotian rock rat, and Australia's mountain pygmy possum, and the Woollamie pine, whatever that may be. All this means we should probably keep an open mind about the world's biological mysteries, he said. And I would have to agree. We should keep our minds open at all times, no matter how far-fetched the stories that we come across may seem.
So you've appeased everyone with your little tongue twisters.
I have.
Some people like your tongue twisters.
my tongue's not always that keen on them.
Right, I'm going to do my Tupenneth for everyone while we've got a couple of minutes to spare. Now, I would have thought this would have happened ages ago, to be honest with you, considering how long this film has actually been out, as well as the sequels and everything. But according to the Telegraph this week, on the 16th of December, religious parents at state schools have complained that Harry Potter glorifies witchcraft and want it banned from classrooms. The government's czar has revealed, as teachers should refuse to teach the subject if there are concerns. The government's behavioural czar has said some parents, particularly of evangelical, Christian and Muslim backgrounds, believe the children's book normalises acts of magic and that therefore it is exposing their children to the works of the devil. Tom Bennett spoke of parents raising concerns as some religious studies teachers use the fantasy novel, which is not in the syllabus, as an example of a collection of books that tell a greater story, like the Bible. Following his revelations, head teachers have said schools should address parents' concern regarding Harry Potter and move away from teaching the story of the famous child magician. Speaking at a City Hall event last month, Mr. Bennett said, Harry Potter deals with the occult. There are many parents who are uncomfortable with their children discussing or looking at or reading anything to do with the occult. For many parents, particularly of evangelical Christian backgrounds and sometimes of some Muslim backgrounds, the occult is not something which exists in fiction and fantasy. The occult is something which is a very living, a live part of their faith. He added that this notion that Harry Potter was not fantasy is quite a thing in some communities. He explained, we're talking about evangelical Protestants, non-indigenous expressions of Christian faith like imported Afro-Caribbean Methodism. Mr. Bennett said some religious studies, RS, teachers resort to Harry Potter to explain a wider point in their classes. He said teachers use all kinds of materials, including Harry Potter. I've seen RS teachers mention it as an example of a collection of books that make a greater story arc like the Bible, and children have made comments that they're not allowed to read them because they're the work of the devil. He said he has found this to be the case in primary and secondary schools in London, so we're not talking about America here. He said parents said they'd rather their children weren't exposed to literature or fiction which normalises or trivialised or even applauded or encouraged what they would regard as witchcraft. But he added, robust teachers will reassure them that the modern RE is not about advancing or supporting any one faith. It's about discussing matters of faith. And if a parent confronts a teacher and says, I don't want them exposed to witchcraft, a good teacher will reassure them that exposing children to a broad range of cultural influences is the school's responsibility, and we can't shirk that in RE and beyond. A spokesman for the National Association of Head Teachers, NAHT, said, we'd suggest the teachers should explain that the books help develop language and creativity and can help non-readers, particularly boys, become interested in reading. If there are grounds for a parent to not want this taught, i.e. religious grounds, the teachers should be flexible in delivering their content and come up with ways to provide an alternative for those pupils. Now, how long have these books been out? And all of us, and now that...
Oh, now.
A hell of a long time. Can I just say, was there a link to that? Rose, you put the wrong one.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Right.
But Brendan said, can it be argued that it's good versus evil, like the battle between the devil and God, etc.? Isn't it the same for Star Wars with the Force?
Well, this is
I totally agree. It could definitely be levelled at that, considering
Let me see if I can find
if they actually read the story, whole Lord Voldemort was considered to be the evil, and Harry and his friends were the good side.
I actually read a review some time ago, which was quite fascinating, of the Harry Potter stuff, that was comparing Voldemort and the whole kind of purebloods magician types to Hitler and the sort of Nazi ideology, and it actually fitted rather frighteningly well. Whole concept of purebloods and the lesser beings of the mixed bloods, and the way he's sort of absolute dominant power over the darker magic. It was very much like Nazis and Hitler. It's quite scary. To the point you wonder if she's almost used it as a model for her concept of evil. It's fascinating.
Have you seen what Brendan's put there? Oh, you read that one, didn't you?
That, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree. It is very much the same kind of thing, isn't it?
I suppose the difference would be is the Force is seen as a blind energy that is used in different ways, whereas certainly Judeo-Christianity has a concept of good and evil as opposites of each other. That it's not like a blind power. Those who are involved in sort of practicing magic, if you like, would have said the same, that it's like the Force. It is just a pure energy, and how you manipulate it, it depends whether you're the left or the right hand path. But Christianity and religions tend to define it as good versus evil, opposites. So there'd be a difference there, certainly.
Right, okay.
But I think it would work, though, wouldn't it, to discuss it in those terms?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as obviously, a former primary school teacher myself, initially I was going to train to teach RE at a secondary school level about 15 years ago, I never did, but you are always faced with the way of trying to find ways of making this stuff seem interesting as well as relevant to young kids, and, using modern fiction as an example of how you can put across stories is quite a common teaching method, even before Harry Potter, certainly.
Yeah, so...
Yeah. I actually just finished reading all the books again.
Yes. Right, we're going to get our guest on the line. Fingers crossed, everyone, this works. I've never done this before, and I never thought I could do it, but it was tested during the week, and it worked. So I'm hoping it works now. Otherwise, we'll have to go back to the dinosaur method. So let's see what happens. Okay, so... yes, hopefully this is the number. And it works. It's ringing anyway. It's a good thing.
Hello.
Hello, John. How are you?
Oh, not too bad at all.
That's all right then.
Hello to everyone at KTPF.
Hello, can you hear me, John?
I can indeed. Hi.
Brilliant.
It's all
That was
working.
the main thing. Right, well, John, can you start off by telling us how you first became interested in ghosts?
Oh, I first became interested in ghosts probably going back to when I was in my mid-teens. Obviously, like anyone else, I'd been into horror films and what have you. And I actually passed the library and found there were actually people that took ghosts seriously, such as the likes of Peter Underwood and Andrew Green, and I think there was a chap called Mark Alexander as well. And I was just totally fascinated by the fact that, this was actually a serious subject worth investigating. So as soon as I was able, I basically started investigating. I joined ASAP. It is ASAP actually, just after it had been formed, and have been interested in various levels ever since.
Yes, ASAP, but not ASAP. Okay, so what is the strangest and most interesting thing you've personally experienced?
Nothing dramatic, actually. I'm probably about as psychic as the average brick.
Okay.
I've had doors swinging open without any obvious explanation and potential mysterious footsteps and so on. But I'm far more interested in some ways in actually trying to investigate other people's experiences on the grounds that whatever the status of a house, I don't actually have many myself. So if you're after strange experiences of white ladies coming out and sort of saying hello to me, that's kind of not the angle I've took it from. I've been more interested in, as I say, trying to find out the truth of what other people have experienced.
Right, okay. Now, I'd like to briefly talk about the Ghost Club, if you will.
Absolutely.
Which I believe you became vice chair of investigations.
Yes, I was vice chair. What happened with the Ghost Club is that I was asked to join by Peter Underwood, who had been swapping some correspondence with. A few years after that, however, Underwood and the other members in the council unfortunately had a split, and Underwood set up a new society. The Ghost Club, for your listeners that don't know, is a august old organisation that's been going on and off since 1863 in various guises. Now, after the Ghost Club is split in two, I became vice chair and also investigations officer, which I did for a few years, and sort of between about 1999 and 2000 and about 2003, in which I basically tried to. The Ghost Club had probably went through a quiet period of investigations, and I basically tried to A, start them up again, and B, start to use some slightly more modern technology such as EMF meters, which, funnily enough, were actually very, very cutting edge at the time. And I did that for a few years, and I am still very much in touch and an active member of the club, but probably more recently my activities have been more obvious in the Society for Psychical Research, another very old organisation that goes back to the 1880s.
Okay. Now, you mentioned it briefly about the Ghost Club. Now, it's gone through, as you said, many stages in its reign, but I read somewhere it originally started in Cambridge. So how did it all start up together, and when did it start?
It started in Cambridge in the early 1860s as a group of people that were just informally interested in the subject. It then, if the records are correct, and there's a certain amount of vagary here, had a lull of a few years and was relaunched again, basically as not an investigation society, as a kind of gentleman's club for talking about spiritualism. Probably no more, no less than that.
Yeah.
It then went quiet for a few years again, and was relaunched in the second part in about the 1920s by certain Harry Price, and the gang. During that period, it had the very revolutionary idea of allowing female members to join.
Right.
A gang, though, it was primarily a debating society, and probably did very little investigations. For example, I'm sure you and your listeners are aware of Price's activity in Burley Rectory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as famous as anything. I mean, it's interesting to note that Price obviously advertised in the Times for observers, but never thought of using anybody through the Ghost Club.
No.
It just wasn't set up as an investigations body. Now, after Price died in 1948, again, it had a slight lull, but was relaunched in the 1950s by Peter Underwood, a chap called Philip Paul, and one or two others. Then it became probably a little bit more like the Ghost Club we know today. It had occasional set-piece investigations,
Yeah.
had obviously regular speakers and other events. It was, however, at that stage, and until the early 1990s, only open to people by recommendation only.
Yeah.
In fact, I probably am the last active person to actually join by that system. As I said, I was doing an investigation of a place called Sandwood Bay in the north of Scotland. Particularly famous, not as being probably the most actively haunted place in the world, but for being one of those very few places where if you go to at night, you can't get out of. It's surrounded by peat bogs and quicksand. So it's, for any of your listeners that want to do something with a slight cutting edge, it is actually literally one of the few ways you can get trapped by staying in a haunted site. It's 3 miles from the nearest road. Once you're there, you're there.
Yeah.
Again, other than I probably saw very little once I'd got used to the environment and recognised what seemed to be light phenomena as a lighthouse in the distance.
Yeah.
But what I did afterwards was quite a lot of interesting research into the ghost, and found out that it could possibly actually have been mistaken by a well-known hermit that actually lived in the area in the Shepherd's Bothy nearby, and in fact only died a few years ago. Now that's kind of a sidetrack. I contacted Peter Underwood, who'd obviously also been interested in this particular case, and from that I joined the Ghost Club, and from that I've now been a member for probably about 25 years.
Yeah. Now, one of the club's earliest investigations I found was in 1862 about a spirit cabinet case involving the Davenport brothers. Although a hoax, were there any other similar cases that were legitimate?
No, to be honest, that was probably, that was obviously in the very first guise of the Ghost Club, when it was just an informal gathering in Cambridge. Yeah. Most of the serious investigations into mediums, both pre and post First World War, were either carried out by the Society for Psychical Research, Harry Price and his University of London laboratory, or various other similar institutions around Europe. One of the better-known cases was actually the Schneider brothers, who literally were very impressive mediums, and who literally got sent from one part of Europe to the other, being repeatedly tested again and again, and some organisations thought they might be fraudulent, and others were totally convinced they were genuine. But no, the Ghost Club was literally, as it sounds, a club for talking about ghosts. It only became an investigations body very much later. I think, for the record, the Davenports were proved to be fraudulent, from my memory.
Yeah. Okay, so concerning some of the members of the club, now we know that, or it said that when Charles Dickens died, it was one of the time that it dissolved, following his death in 1870s. But back in the day, there's been some members including Dennis Wheatley, Peter Cushon, Peter Underwood that you've mentioned, Maurice Grosse, who was famous for the Enfield poltergeist.
Colin Wilson was also an honorary vice president. If you remember, he's the writer of various books in the occult and other things. And have you ever read him? Actually, absolutely fascinating character.
No, I haven't. I'll be honest with you.
No, he actually died very recently as well, as did unfortunately Peter Underwood. But yes, I mean, during Peter's time as president, I mean, Peter is one of the very, very few people that actually led the latter part of his life as in inverted commas, professional ghost hunter. And in doing so, he obviously had the time to make a lot of contacts.
Yeah.
And I wasn't averse to a little bit of media coverage either. And got a lot of well-known people interested in the subject.
Yeah. Now, present-day members include two of our recent previous guests, Reverend Lionel Fanthorpe and psychologist and TV personality Dr. Kieran O'Keefe, who's listed as the advisor to the club. Is it still as significant today as it was back then, or has the constant changes and time itself made this organisation less prominent?
I'd say the club is it's definitely one of the big three national paranormal organisations, along with the Society for Psychical Research and ASAP. Now, the club, as I say, has never probably been at the forefront of psychical investigation. It does investigations. It does some fairly good investigations, a particularly good one being an extended one at Ham House. But the club is what it sounds to be. It's a very, very good way of introducing yourself to the subject. It has monthly speakers meetings in London. It has investigations all around the country. In fact, the current investigations officer is Scottish, so there's obviously a predominance of a certain amount of investigations up there. And I would say the club is a great way of meeting like-minded people, becoming interested in the subject, swapping contacts in the subject, and taking your first dip into investigating phenomena. Far, far, far better than, if you like, maybe paying to go on an event, even if it's genuinely held, but having no control or no real input into the situation. But the Ghost Club has never really been between Victorian times and the 30s, an organisation at the forefront of an investigation. That's never what it was built up for, and certainly wasn't its purpose at that time. And it still does what it does do very well.
Right, okay. Now, you've mentioned that you're a member of the Society for Psychical Research, the SPR.
That's right, yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about the organisation?
Of course I can, yes. It was founded relatively recently compared to the Ghost Club in 1883, primarily as a response to all these mediums that were popping up, and obviously find out the truth or otherwise. the phenomena they were producing. Now, it was actually a very, I mean, it had scientists and Nobel Prize winners. One name that particularly comes to mind as an early member was a certain guy called Arthur Balfour, who, after resigning as president of the Ghost Club, went on to be Prime Minister. Now, I mean, if you think about, resigning as president of the SPR, went on to be Prime Minister. Now, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, that would kind of be the equivalent of having, you know, David Cameron very seriously interested in paranormal research 10 years ago. It was actually taken incredibly seriously both by scientists and other people of fairly high standing at the time. No, it primarily had a bias towards investigating mediums, certainly in its earlier stages, and spent a lot of time both trying to validate and obviously in some cases prove mediums as fraudulent. It was obviously more recently firstly responsible for the Enfield poltergeist case, which it passed out to a at the time fairly new investigator, Maurice Gross, who was obviously helped along by Guy Playfair, and again more recently has been particularly renowned for a elongated of tests and mediums known as the Skull experiment. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, no?
Yes.
Yeah, which actually proved controversial because it was done by three council members who were probably primarily believers, who found the phenomena interesting and quite believable, but who could only participate by allowing the controls to be set up by the mediums themselves. And whilst there were obviously some controls, obviously an ideal investigation involves actually being able to make your own controls. So to this day there's been a lot of debate in that, and possibly the mythology was flawed, but obviously others would disagree. I mean, what the SPR has that other organisations don't is good contacts with the 8 or 9 university groups around the country which take parapsychology seriously. It will coordinate with them with regards to annual conferences and the like. It also has, because of bursaries and inheritances and wise investments, a full-time member of staff running the organisation, and an academic journal that gets produced every quarter and is available in university libraries. So, I mean, investigation-wise, the SPR is probably the organisation that's rightly or wrongly taken a little bit more seriously by people outside the subject.
Yeah.
Though probably not as seriously as we'd like.
Okay, so can anyone join this, or how? And if so, how would they go about it?
They would go on to the SPR website. If you Google SPR, you can find it. I think it's spr.ac.uk, but it's far safer to Google the SPR. And yes, no, absolutely. I mean, in theory, any appointment has to be approved by the council, but but it's more a question of unless you put satanic devil worshipper on your application form, if you're sure you've got an obvious interest in the subject, you'll be highly likely to be accepted as a member, and I'd encourage people to do that.
Okay. Now, we know that you've done some extensive research to the cage, which is situated in St Osyth, which has got plenty of history to it. Now, I'm going to hand you over to Andy because he's actually been there, so he'll know exactly what you're talking about. So, Andy, do you want to take over?
Absolutely, sure. Yes, when John and
Hi, Andy.
Hello there, John. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad at all.
It's just saying, as we talked obviously briefly at the Vampire Symposium in the summer about, and us having both a strong interest in the location. I mean, I'm fascinated because I'm quite interested in folklore and witchcraft generally, and I've done a lot of research in that area, and of course St. Joseph's is quite famous for its witchcraft trials. How did you first get interested in that particular location though, John?
I was actually contacted. I'm on the Spontaneous Cases Committee of the SPR, which is basically where the email goes if somebody says their house is haunted or they're experiencing some phenomena. And I was actually contacted in 2010 by Vanessa Mitchell, who basically told us that she had a haunted house that she could no longer live in, and what could she do about it? So, I mean, in 2010, we went down to visit, found Vanessa to be a credible witness, interviewed her at length, and obviously took a look around the premises. We didn't do an investigation as such. That's not really what we were down for. And since then, I have kind of kept in contact, watching, briefing the situation with Vanessa for a few years. And as you probably know, Vanessa's answer to her issue of what she could possibly do with a haunted house which neither herself nor her tenants could live in was to hire it out for paranormal research. Mm-hmm. And over that few years, numerous groups obviously attended. And I actually said to Vanessa at one point it would have been a good idea if they'd actually had to send her back formal reports or something, but that didn't happen. So you had this weird and interesting situation of lots of unconnected groups going into a reputedly haunted premises, leaving, doing their own internal reports, and then another group going in, and there being no way of comparing that with previous groups, or for that matter, with the previous witnesses that originally lived there. So I kind of thought, wouldn't it be interesting to actually try to find out what everybody had experienced? Mm-hmm. So I decided to do a slightly extended project of going back there, interviewing all the local witnesses, or as many of the local witnesses as were willing to be interviewed, and then through a process making contact with the groups and individuals that had stayed there subsequently, and trying to find out if they had any significant experiences and of what type. Now, what made the cage even more interesting is, unlike other buildings that are sometimes hired out for the paranormal, it's actually quite small.
Small, it's
so,
tight, isn't it?
It's a two-down house, to be honest. Now, for example, I don't know, have you ever been to Woodchester Manor?
I would say that I have been there approximately 50 times.
Okay.
I was going to say, actually, John, I tried to do a similar kind of mini project myself a few years ago with Woodchester Mansion, collecting witnesses' experiences and different investigations. I used to be involved in a company called Fright Nights many years ago.
Yeah, I've heard about that, yeah.
Well, I used to go there almost weekly with Fright Nights for a couple of years, really. So I had a chance to hear all sorts of different investigation experiences and collated some interesting information where people were experiencing similar phenomenon, which obviously I won't go into right now because this is about the cage, but it's something that we should definitely talk about at some point. So I know exactly where you're coming from about the idea of collating other groups' investigations and the material to build up an overall picture of the haunting event at a location. It's a fascinating project, certainly.
No, absolutely. But what I was going to say is, you're obviously well aware of Woodchester. the advantage a cage has over Woodchester is if you're trying to identify phenomena to a place, you've basically got about 6 identifiable rooms.
Yeah.
How many is in Woodchester?
Oh Lord, about 50.
Exactly. You would have to spend 20 years of investigation to get a Cluedo-style thing of it was seen by X in Y, if you like. Actually found out doing the thing, it was actually quite important to actually identify the area rather than just the experience. We'll probably go on to that in a minute. So it seemed a nice self-contained project, which I spent a reasonable amount of time on. We spoke to many interesting people, including the leader of one of the very few active Danish paranormal groups who actually went over there as part of a potential TV project, and who promises to try to send me the footage when it's actually shown. And if any of your listeners speak Danish, I'll be most helpful in the future. But what I did actually find, probably quite surprisingly, what I actually wanted to do to a certain extent was to show that with any apparent haunted premises, you tend to get 1 or 2 people making all the reports. By definition, it's people that kind of called your society in. They may also say something like, oh, my neighbour came round and he saw this and he saw that. But very often you've just got to take that at face value, and you can't you don't necessarily get a chance to talk to the neighbour. Now, as the cage has kind of been in the newspaper headlines and had caused some controversy with some controversial photographs as well, I wanted to actually, at the very least, try to prove that there was substance beyond Vanessa's experiences. I think I certainly proved that. But what we also showed, and I'll probably go into a little bit more detail in a second, was that there was, in various instances, a very close correlation of the types of phenomena people were experiencing. And these were people in different groups that hadn't necessarily published their facts or even told Vanessa or even told anyone, to be honest, until I started investigating the process. Hello, still here, yes.
Sorry,
Sorry, I stopped a little bit abruptly there. Perhaps I should say a few words about the types of similar things that we found.
I tell you what I might suggest first of all, John, if you could quickly give our listeners an idea of the history and the background of the place. I can just sort of quickly draw that out.
Absolutely.
If anyone doesn't know the cage, it's got the name The Cage because it's actually the house, or small house, is built on the site really of a former prison, basically, a single cell prison where witches were held in the 1600s. So there's one particular room which has no windows, just a very large door in it, which is actually sealed up, that is believed to be either is the actual cage itself, or at least the building's been built directly on the same footprint of the original cage.
More liable to be the latter, actually, yeah. But yes, it's definitely on the same site.
Yeah, the building that's there now was built, I think, in the 1800s, but say the exact site goes back to the 1500s. And it is essentially that. It's a small 2-bedroom, sort of 2 up, 2 down little house. It's if it wasn't for its rather spooky history, shall we say, it's actually quite a nice little building. You got a quite large car park to yourself as well, which is quite useful these days. Quite uncommon for an old building like that. And the rooms aren't too badly sized. It's just that it seems to have other people living in it, shall we say, that are not necessarily happy about you being there sometimes.
Yes, this has also got a very nice pub next door as well. So it's
that's true.
got everything possible we'd want for kind of everyday village living. And St. Joseph's is actually a very, very nice village. It should be a nice little I think Vanessa put it, it's a nice little slice of English history that she was very pleased to buy into. Vanessa Mitchell, again, just to clarify for any of your listeners, is the current owner of the cage who lived there for a few years and then let it out for paranormal research. But yes, you basically got an ex-holding cell. It did continue as a holding cell, even if that wasn't the original building, I think until 1911, and then obviously had various guises as a normal dwelling. Haven't yet, I know somebody that's working in it, done a full historic research into the place. That might be stage 2 of the project. But stage 1 was very much to find out what people were experiencing there.
Gentlemen, a quick question from our chat room. Brendan has asked, has anybody ever done a solo overnight at the cage?
If I can answer that one, I can say couple of people sort of did in different rooms. After the last time I was at the cage, John Blackburn, who runs Mysteria now, Enigma, spent the night there basically. He just didn't bother buying accommodation anywhere else and actually spent the night. I don't think an awful lot happened. The night itself was relatively quiet anyway. There were a couple of things that I experienced and people with were also aware of these things happening. But yeah, so John spent the night there. But it's one of those places, like a lot of haunted locations, that after a certain amount of time, they tend to go quiet. And usually sort of 3-4 in the morning, the cage does become pretty quiet and not an awful lot going on. So, yeah, I know John did definitely spend the night there.
Yes, I think quite a few people have spent the night there, and sometimes things happen and sometimes things don't happen. I mean, there's no, even in an actively haunted place, I mean, there's no guarantee that phenomena will occur every night. Now, I actually think, I'm trying to remember his name, it's actually somebody is actually staying there at the moment, I believe. If I believe it's actually being, if you like, rented out on a semi-permanent basis by an investigator whose name suddenly escapes me, but if somebody looks at the Cage website or Facebook page, Mickey Rawlings, I think. If he by any chance is listening, it would be very interesting to see what he's actually experienced. That's only something that's happened over the last couple of months, and after I completed at least the first stage of my project.
Shall we speak about some of the more specific experiences people have had there? If I could.
Yes, I think because as I say, I only started out to get, a certain number of people to say, yes, I've experienced something as well. It was rather as I started listening to people, I kind of started to think, I've heard this story before, if you know what I mean, or a very similar story. Now, there was various categories of phenomena that kind of what I called similar fact occurrences, which, funnily enough, from a legal point of view, if you're talking about witness statements in anything else and unrelated people mentioned the same thing, it would be seen as being evidentially very strong in a court of law. But when it becomes to a paranormal event, witness testimony tends to get a very bad press. Now, obviously, there's lots of other potential explanations for witness testimony, but once you get people experiencing the same thing, you've got to say that there must be something that probably triggers it off. Now, first thing that we found, now this is probably the most mundane sounding. We'll start with mundane and work our way up to exciting as we go along, but it's also one of the most testable things, if anyone else is ever going in there, is actually constant footsteps on the staircase. Now, it's a 18th century staircase, slightly old. Small possibility these footsteps could be a shift in the building, but what makes that far less likely is, certainly in several instances, independent witnesses have also said that the door at the bottom of the staircase bangs before the staircase, before the footsteps are then held. There's actually a very old-fashioned door right at the bottom of the stairs. So in effect, you've got a bang and then a creak, 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 creak. And we must have had about at least we interviewed in all about 23 people, and must have had about 7 or 8 people coming up with exactly the same experience. Now, this is barely given a mention in the Cage's website because Vanessa experienced real, solid-looking figures that were ghosts, and which were obviously far more significant to her. So the chances of auto-suggestion, again, are limited. And yet we've got, again, about 7 or 8 people out of 23 experiencing the creaking of stairs, and in some instances the slamming of doors beforehand. Now, I'm not going to say that's definitely a ghost. All I'm going to say is that if a certain number of people experience the same thing in the same place, it's currently unexplained and it's in need of a good explanation. That's what investigating the paranormal is all about. Trying to explain the inexplicable, and if you can't explain it, saying at the very least there's a possibility of the paranormal there.
Can I quickly interject here, guys?
Absolutely.
Della is asking a question for you, John. She said, in your experience of reported hauntings, do you notice any indicators that extreme coldness occurs when the apparent entity is allegedly sentient, or they are indicative of signs of sentience?
Occasionally, but not. That's reported, but not in enough cases to make me think it necessarily has been proven to go with phenomena. It is. It is one of those very. The original ghost hunting equipment was basically a camera and a thermometer, and it's throughout the existence of ghosts, people have thought, have spoken about cold spots, but I haven't seen enough of that myself to be wholly convinced of it. But there again, it is a possibility.
Okay, well, she goes on to say, I totally get the similar fact evidence angle, which, as John says, is as disputable as in a court of law as it is when one's paranormal theories are challenged by the skeptics.
Sorry, I missed the last bit there.
She said about which John says is disputable in a court of law, and it is when one's paranormal theories are challenged by skeptics.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yes. Skeptics. Some skeptics. I'd call myself a skeptic with a small s. Some skeptics have a habit of churning out the same old explanation over and over again without having visited a place.
Yeah.
That I think is probably slightly lazy, and simply say, oh, it's auto-suggestion, it's the expectation of seeing something.
I suspect I know exactly who you're talking about there, John, but we won't name names.
No, I wasn't talking about any one person in particular.
No,
actually, there's a number of people, and I really wouldn't speak about any one person over another. I'm trying to think if you're thinking of the person I'm thinking you're thinking of, but I don't know if you are or not. So
all I'll say is book review.
Pardon?
Book review. Your book review.
Oh yes. You must be talking about.
mean.
You must be talking about Haley Stevenson.
I didn't name any names. Didn't name any names.
I'm a Facebook friend of Haley. Hi Haley, if you're listening in. I'm a Facebook friend of Haley, and about half our blogs I totally agree with. But you can't simply say something is X, Y, or you can say something might be X, Y, or Z, but you can't simply say something is X, Y, and Z without taking a closer look at it first.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was...
I agree with that point about people saying very detailed explanations of places they've never been to, which I find very irritating. Unless you experience it for yourself, you can't really comment based on third-party stories and evidence.
No, absolutely not. But one set of witness testimony, or one set of related witness testimony, is open to that theory. And it's a perfectly valid theory, which probably does explain a certain number of paranormal experiences. You know, that people literally get themselves freaked out and get an expectation of experiencing something, so therefore experience it. Mm-hmm. However, what the similar facts thing does is take it a level higher by showing that if people are experiencing exactly the same thing without actually knowing previously what the previous person experienced, which can only probably be done in the cage and places that aren't permanently residented for, or it's permanently residented by living people, that takes it beyond that argument, not necessarily beyond any non-paranormal argument, but it sets a challenge for people to come up with a more thorough non-paranormal explanation, which I would love people who are sceptical, with a small s, to get involved with. If there is a normal explanation for this, I'd in some ways consider it the research a success to get to that place. But if there isn't, I in some way consider the research a success to get away from that place. I kind of win either way there, don't I?
Somewhat. But no, I certainly agree with what you're saying, that it's important to consider all possibilities.
But shall I briefly just tell you about the other similar fact things that happened, actually? Some of them, I'll briefly... The second thing's actually similar to the first, and I'll only go over it briefly. Part of the core phenomena also was the opening of bedroom doors and the lifting of the latch for the bedroom doors to open. Now that happened on a not, I think, a very frequent basis, or I understand a very frequent basis, when the house was residented, and has certainly happened fairly frequently when the premises have been vacated, sometimes caught on video as well. Now again, you've got the possibility of the old creaky door and the old malfunctioning latch theory, which is a perfectly valid theory in a 300-year-old house. However, a number of these descriptions talk about the door being banged open and in one case nearly taken off its latches. And one of the video pieces of evidence quite literally show that happening. So again, the obvious natural explanation is left in not quite such an obvious position. Again, there may be a natural explanation, but it's one you've got to get down and really look for, and one that isn't immediately apparent. And the fact that it's happened to numerous people, again, strengthens it beyond somebody making it up, etc., etc., etc. But now we kind of get on to the more, I won't call it fun stuff, 'cause it's certainly not fun, but the more extreme stuff that's been happening down there. Now, to date, I've had 4 definite and 1 anecdotal experience of, for want of a better description, poltergeist scratchings. Yeah. That's when you're in a situation and in a haunted house, and suddenly you feel a pain somewhere, and suddenly a scratch mark appears to come to your skin. Now, these are relatively rare, as far as I can see. I certainly don't know any other premises where 5 have been recorded, and they're usually far more prevalent around. I've known 1 or 2 mediums that suffer from them, or at least have suffered from them in the past. But certainly with regards to a haunted house, this is a very rare, and obviously for the person that experiences it, a quite disturbing phenomena. I mean, one lady had her leg so badly scratched she had to go to a doctor, and it was actually, I mean, she was wearing jeans and boots at the time, so there wasn't any obvious way, to get at the calf, but it was actually recorded as being a combination of scratches and minor burns. So quite what was happening there, I don't really know.
Very unusual.
Yeah, I mean the others were more conventional scratching, but again, there could be an obvious explanation, but it's just not obvious at this point. So there is a possibility, and I would only say a possibility, that the explanation is beyond our understanding of current science.
Well, funnily enough, the only time I've ever actually seen it happen myself was at Woodchester Mansion, the place you talked about yesterday, where the chap directly in front of you, walking downstairs to its cellar, suddenly said, "Oh, my back's suddenly hurting. It feels like it's hot." As he pulled his fleece back, it was just a fleece and no chain or anything, so there was nothing sharp that could have scratched his back. There were 2 very definite, quite long lines down the top part of his back, as if someone had just scratched him. And it was literally happening as you were walking down the stairs. He said, "Oh, my back's feeling really warm. That's not uncomfortable." And so when we looked, the scratches had appeared. So it's very odd phenomenon.
That's actually really interesting, because it's kind of, I've kind of always have been tempted to write to Woodchester and say, for God's sake, keep a record of what's happening. But it sounds like you were kind of half doing that anyway. Now, it actually occurs to me that there's even a possibility this type of phenomena might be a little bit more common, but again, because nobody's kind of compiling reports, it's people are unaware of it happening to anyone other than themselves, and because it's only happened to themselves, they don't really know what to do with it. Although if you've been to Woodchester 50 times and it's only happened once, I suppose statistically it doesn't come out as being one of the overriding phenomena at that place. Would that be fair?
I would say so. I'd say so. The trouble is, of course, I mean, obviously a lot of those were, the particular event where the scratches occurred was actually a private investigation. It was a small team, but most of the ones I've been in was working with Fright Nights, and we've had people report all sorts of things, but hard to verify when you have a large crowd of excitable people, which is often the case in these bigger investigations. But yeah, I mean, it's not, I don't know how many investigations over the years, and it's the first time and only time I've actually not so much saw them form, but within a few moments of it forming, to actually see it myself. It's the only time I've ever actually had that experience.
Yeah, no, in that case, I mean, it does sound, it is relatively rare. I've known, I mean, it's not unheard of, but which is why this term poltergeist scratching exists. But it's certainly to have 5. As I say, 1 as yet I'm still working on, but 4 absolutely verified, and quite possibly 5 in a group of about, as I say, just over 20 witnesses is, I would say, very unusual indeed.
Certainly.
Gentlemen, I have something from Della for you. She says, have any swabs been done DNA-wise from scratches? Although of course A&E was probably not remotely interested, but is there a way that we in the paranormal community can do this, some sort of kit for sending off? Maybe?
I don't know if there would be, to be honest with you, anything that's sort of comparable that by a member of the public to analyse minor injuries. No, at the top of my head, I can't think of any way they would do. As you say, obviously a hospital wouldn't have slightest interest in a very minor scratch on your neck. And if you thought it was caused by a ghost, they'd probably just kick you out or send for the psychiatric unit. But no, it would be something worth being able to analyse, but I don't see how we could, unfortunately.
It's just I mean, at the moment, we've got psychologists reasonably interested in the subject, one or two physicists as well. But you'd probably need, to get somebody to answer the right questions, you'd probably need a doctors, biologists that were actually willing to give up their time. And I sadly don't know of any as yet. But yes, I mean, I actually find a lot of the interest in actually trying to research what's happened afterwards. So I know exactly where Della's coming from. But no, in that instance, we've got photographs of the foot scratchings I mentioned. They found it significant enough to take photographs immediately afterwards. So I mean, we could study that for a pattern. But unfortunately, I think at our present level of expertise, that would probably hit a dead end with. Sorry, Della.
Okay.
Certainly. I mean, the most amazing, well, the most dramatic, I don't know what the right term is, the most obvious, we say, experience I had at the cage, which I think I've told John about before, was the door to the toilet downstairs being closed and then wide open, literally a second or so later, without a single sound, and certainly no one being near it. If you know the location, obviously, John, you know the location. I was standing in what would be the entrance to the lounge from the small sort of doorway, porchway entrance, if you like. When you stand there, the stairs are on your immediate left, and then further back there's a small toilet, the downstairs toilet.
That's right, you've got a door to the toilet and next to a door to the stairs, in effect, yeah.
That's it, yeah, exactly. Now, I was standing there in the sort of the frame, because there's no door that leads from that small sort of entrance lobby to the lounge. I was standing in the frame of that. I looked across, so the toilet door was shut. Looked back again, literally a second or two later, and it was wide open. And nobody had been anywhere near it. There'd been no sound of it being open, no movement, nothing. So that was quite surprising, to say the least. That was probably the best physical, sort of observable phenomenon I ever experienced in the 3 times.
In the cage, yeah. That kind of ticks. It obviously slightly ticks the ticks the box of opening of doors. It's, in other ways, it's actually atypical of most things, because a number of people will not go to the toilet upstairs because it's very near the top of landing where there was a suicide in the past, and is possibly very close to the core of the phenomena. And a lot of people will only go to the toilet downstairs, which is where you saw your phenomena.
Yeah.
But which shows not everything fits into neat little packages. I think the only other phenomena I've heard reported there was a domestic hind being stored there that apparently moved a couple of feet across the floor. So it's certainly not devoid of phenomena, that toilet.
The other thing I was going to quickly mention, I think we're running a bit short on time, is I don't know if you know, John, there is a project at the moment. They're actually digging into the base of the cage room itself. They've actually dug, when I was last there, a good 6 feet down, and they've not discovered anything too significant. Some bones and some other material, but they don't know if the bones were human or other animals. I don't know if you know anything about that at all.
Yeah, I photographed the. I photographed a selection of meaningful, reasonably interesting artefacts, and at some point I'm going to try and get in touch with an archaeologist. I'm suspecting they're going to be medieval pottery, medieval piping, and possibly medieval leather as well. The bone which you refer to could have been a fragment of a human bone. It unfortunately seems to have disappeared more recently. But again, bearing in mind where you were, I mean, it could have came anywhere in the last few hundred years, if you like. but it was only a small fragment. It's an interesting selection of bits and pieces, but probably nothing over. Oh, there's a lot of weird-looking animal bones, but we have had them inspected. They turned out to be piglets and cows. The piglet bit's quite interesting because they used to eat suckling pig a lot at that time. Thus the piglet bones rather than the pig bones. But probably nothing you'd expect to get you wouldn't expect to get underneath a house with at the very least 600 or 700-year-old foundations, and
Absolutely.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But no, it's a fascinating place. Well worthy of further investigation. There may be a stage 2 to this project, but at the moment I'm letting stage 1 settle. And if anyone has had experiences in the cage, at the end I'll kind of give out an email address for various reasons, and you can certainly please get in contact with me.
Okay, we've just we've got Mo Keohan, if that's how you pronounce it. I believe she's one of your witnesses that you've interviewed, John.
She is indeed. Hi, Mo.
Yeah, she's listening in. She couldn't get into the chat room, but she said she's had a few experiences herself. But I thought I'd just give her a bit of a shout out. She had trouble getting in the chat room. Apparently, it was saying that she was spam, but I don't know what's going on there, to be honest with you. But but anyway, going back to your actual writings. Now, back in 2010, you wrote a book entitled Ghost Hunting, A Survivor's Guide, where you point out how the description ghost is used to refer to a number of different possibilities. Have your investigations led you towards any particular theories on what ghosts are? And do you think any ghost represents evidence of the afterlife?
No, and don't know. That's a quick answer.
Okay.
Ghosts are extremely irritating things. They don't seem to fit into any particular category. They do at some points. For example, you've got the stone tape theory, and one or two cases where you might see the upper half of somebody's body and then find that the floor was lower, walking across the room, and then find that the floor was lower at a certain point. You've got a few cases like that might fit that theory quite neatly, but then not that many, and it certainly doesn't explain why a plate might fly across the room in a poltergeist case, or various other things happen in different types of cases. I tend to think ghosts is a word that probably, or haunting's a word that probably describes 4 or 5 different types of phenomena.
Yeah.
Some of which may have possible natural explanations, some of which possibly not. But I think in a certain way we give ourselves difficulty by not using sufficient words to describe the phenomena. Our terminology is very loose. So, I mean, if there is, let's just suppose there is an afterlife ghost, it probably, a lot of the phenomena probably isn't that, but something else entirely.
Yeah.
For example, poltergeist phenomena could actually be PK phenomena from people that are stressed out or of a certain adolescence age, and so on. But I think there is a possibility that what we call hauntings or paranormal events are actually 3 or 4 different phenomena rolled into one. Some of which might be normal psychological explanations, as I say, some of which might not be.
Now, you also suggest in your book that it is potentially useful for psychics or mediums to assist on investigations. Could you tell us more about this?
Yes, because we don't know, I always start from the fact that we don't know we aren't sure if what we're investigating exists, but even if it does exist in a paranormal sense, and I'm glad you asked me the first question, because even if it does exist, we're not quite sure what it is. So long as we're doing an experiment in an objective way, it doesn't really, to a certain extent, matter whether that experiment is within normal science or outside of normal science. And at this point, I'll apologise for calling mediums an experiment, but I think you probably know it. I mean, where a medium can be useful is not in a famous case where everything's very well known, if you like, but in a less famous case where they can be taken in without knowing the background.
Yeah.
I mean, I have had one case like that I investigated, which was actually a council house, that again, funnily enough, a single mother couldn't no longer stay in. And the mediums I took in identified the sex, approximate age, and approximate race of the ghost. So we said, which was actually very impressive. So taking a medium in like that, I would say, is an interesting and valid experiment, so long as you're sure and the person is sure that actually owns the premises that it's not going to, for want of a better expression, spook the person out, because obviously some people have a preconception of what a medium is.
Yeah.
What I would always personally say is because the subject isn't understood, I would never in any way encourage anyone to contact a medium to try and, clear a building or not. That's way outside my area of expertise.
Right.
And anecdotally, I've heard it can occasionally work. It can occasionally make things worse.
Yeah.
Whether that's a psychological effect or a reverse psychological effect or a real effect, I can't be sure, but the only way I would use mediums is where I know the person is happy about it, and where I know where they would only actually, if you like, add to the report rather than add to the phenomena.
Right, okay.
Because most people, two types of investigations. There's one in big old houses where, to a certain extent, it's not a resident, but where it's a resident, most people invite you in the hope that you can either rationalise it or in the hope that you can somehow calm things down. Can't do the latter, can sometimes do the former, but the thing I would never do in any investigation is to hype anything up.
Yeah.
Nor should anyone in any organisation.
I agree. When it comes to the tool of the trades, what equipment would you think, in your opinion, would be best to take with you, and what do you not think would be a good idea?
Within the criteria I've given, I have no real no-nos about what equipment shouldn't be used on what I would call a set-piece investigation, in a non-residential site.
Yeah.
I mean, the one that causes all kinds of weird controversy is probably not mediums, but either planchettes or Ouija boards, which I think are highly likely psychological in nature and can sometimes make an interesting experiment in collective subconscious, if nothing else. I mean, 99% of anything I've ever heard about in a Ouija board is total gibberish. It's sometimes coherent gibberish, but never usually. The best example is going back to Burley Rectory, where the twice reported a series of actual, I think it was Plachette seances that were held in Streatham of all places, which is just up the road from myself, miles away from Burley Rectory, which got the very famous name of a ghost called Sunnex Amours, who burnt down the rectory. Now, any peripheral look of England throughout the past 1,000 years, does anyone know a guy called Sunnex? Has anyone ever heard of somebody in history called Sunnex?
No.
It's a collective. It's highly likely collective conscious session which went to one letter rather than the other by accident, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But having said that, again, like with mediums, if a Ouija board brings up some information that is otherwise unknown, taken to its extreme, if it says the treasure's hidden behind the wall, and you open up the back of the wall and you find the treasure, that's never happened, by the way, but just that would be damned impressive evidence.
Yeah.
Damned impressive evidence that the Ouija board was more than just collective subconscious. So in set-piece investigations, my only rules are what people feel comfortable with using. If they're freaked out by something, they shouldn't use it. If their hosts might be freaked out with something, they definitely shouldn't use it. But the idea of equipment having dials and whistles somehow being scientific is actually in some way a false path. Like EMF meters, they measure electromagnetic frequency at certain wavelengths. I mean, electromagnetic frequency occurs for all kinds of reasons. There's no real working theory that it's the building blocks of anything supernatural, although that's obviously the supposition behind it. If you had EMF meters going off at the same time as somebody saw something, now that would be interesting.
Yeah.
But again, it's just like the in inverted commas non-scientific equipment. You have to make a connection between what's being measured and it not being natural. Otherwise, an EMF meter will go off when there's electromagnetic frequency.
Yeah.
When somebody's mobile passes by, when there's natural residues. What makes EMFs even worse is there is a working theory that where there's a high background of EMF residue, it can actually very slightly frazzle the brain and make people think they see things through the corner of their eyes.
Yes.
So it could actually be a skeptic explanation as well.
Yeah.
So there's no equipment that is entirely trustworthy simply on the basis that we don't know what ghosts are. So any equipment that can set up a logical explanation is, in my opinion, a logical experimentation is, in my opinion, valid. Mm-hmm. Now, that might be seen as quite controversial, but if you think about it a bit, it probably is common sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So have you any plans to write any more books, John?
Not quite at present, but you never know in the future. I kind of, at the time, had something particular I wanted to say about investigating the paranormal. And funnily enough, when I started out writing that in about 2008, there was actually very, very few books about investigating the paranormal. I think mine got published at the same time as about 2 or 3 others, and now there must be about 15 on the market. So that angle has been totally explored. I've never been tempted to just write a book about haunted sites to date, unless there was a particularly interesting one, because that again has been done, pretty well by several other authors. But as soon as I get a good idea, I might well put pen to paper again. I mean, saying that, what I did with The Cage was actually a 6,000 to 7,000 word report. So, Just because I haven't been doing a book, it doesn't mean I haven't been writing.
No.
But nothing imminent. But watch this space, as I say.
Okay. So just to finish off, where can people find out more about you, John, and your organisations?
I haven't got a I haven't got a website, unfortunately. But all my organisations do have. If you the Ghost Club is www.ghostclub.co.uk, but far easier just to Google Ghost Club. When they first built the website, it used to come about fifth under Roll Voice, Silver Shadow, Ghost Enthusiasts, but now it usually comes top and you can't miss it. Well done, our website designers. The SPR, again, if you put it in long-term Society for Psychical Research, you'll get the website again explaining everything about the SPR, and in both cases explaining how you can join. And both organisations have their uses if you want to go further into the subject, and I'd recommend both depending on how far you want to get in. If anyone is interested in copies of a 2010 book, I will. There's ways of buying them via PayPal, and I can give the relevant email address either. I can give it on air and on the maybe put it on your website afterwards. I would say this book isn't about any particular haunted sites. It's about ghost hunting, why we should do it, should we do it, and what we should get out of it. Okay. But if anyone is interested, if they want to, okay, if I give out my email address.
You carry on if you want to.
Yeah. If they email me at J Fraser, that's JFRASER. Then same word, ghost hunting, as it sounds, at hotmail.co.uk. I will. That's actually the way to pay via PayPal as well. But if they email me if they're interested, I'll send out proper instructions, etc. No problem at all. But yeah, it's. I mean, I would like to end by saying to all some ghost hunters tend to call me skeptic, and some skeptics tend to call me a gullible believer. I think of myself. Yeah, I was actually speaking to Eddie Brazil, who writes with who wrote the Burley Ghost Hunters Companion the other day, and he said he started off by telling me a ghost story by preempting it. Now I know you probably won't believe me. I said, hang on. Well, I kind of think anyone that says they're sure what's happening out there when something unexplained happens is the ones that are being totally gullible. There's enough stuff we don't know about to A, not give an instant explanation, and B, if you're curious-minded, want to get the hell out there and investigate it.
Yeah,
hopefully the last hour or so has given a couple of pointers on how to do so, and shown how interesting it can be. And even if nothing happens, I can think of worse ways of spending an evening in a sort of 600-year-old house. Just relaxing in its history, and it's quite an experience in itself. It's probably why haunted supermarkets don't get investigated quite as often.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I must admit, I agree with Della. It's been a great interview, John. They've loved it.
Della said that. Oh, well, thanks, Della.
we love having you on, so it's been really great. So thank you very much for giving us your time.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me.
No problem. You have a very Merry Christmas, John, and a Happy New Year.
Okay, and same to you, and may all your spirits be... No, I was trying to think of a spirit of Christmas pun, but it's totally gone from me. So I will leave this interview with a failed joke. But it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Well, may all your spirits be liquid.
And Merry Christmas to all you and all your listeners. Bye for now.
John.
Bye.
Cheers.
There we go.
Right. Well, that was John Fraser, and it worked.
Yes, absolutely.
And you've still got Andy.
I've still got Andy.
I'm still here, and it's nice and clear. Got no dropouts, clear signal, perfect.
Well,
Brilliant.
Well, when we tested that, we're doing it the other day, she cut me off as well.
You've never done that yet. So far, so good.
No,
So.
So, but yes, what an interesting interview, and thank you again to John for giving us his time and coming on the show. Now, next week, guys, it's going to be a short show due to the Christmas period, but we're doing a review of the year, aren't we, Andy?
We are indeed.
And I've left it all to you, so I'm dreading it.
Just basically gone through some of our shows over the last year and sort of pull out a few highlights. Like we did last year, or earlier this year actually, with our anniversary show. Just to sort of discuss briefly what we've talked about. So it's just to say it's only going to be a short show. Just those who are recovering from Christmas hangover might find it interesting to have a listen in, and obviously on repeat, etc. But yeah, no, I've lined up a few clips and I'll look for a few more over the next couple of days that kind of sum up some of the more interesting conversations we've had over the last year. And of course, there's one or two that we would rather forget about. But I won't mention those. I just did.
So no bloopers then?
That would be unfair to us, shall we say.
Yes, that's all right then. So anyway, so that will be interesting to see. And so what we're going to do now, as I say, don't forget, if you would like to be on the show, then contact us at show@ktpf.co.uk, or if you have any suggestions for guests that we could possibly get on the show, then please contact us, because we will cover all these genres under the paranormal banner, and including cryptozoology as well, and ufology. So why don't you get involved, because this is your show too. The 7th issue of our magazine is out now. It came out last week, and you can get that by clicking on the menu bar on the online magazine part. And if you missed last week's show, you can also click on podcast and find out what's the last 4 podcasts are there, and you can check back at the YouTube channel where you'll find the rest of the shows that we've had from day one. So that's them there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to hand back over to Andy for his little spot.
Oh yes, I have a little spot.
You'll have to get some cream for it then, Andy.
Absolutely, yes. Just a few of the sort of the more weird and wonderful things I've come across over the last week. I'm just going to get this link to work. I'm using a slightly different setup to normal. I'm on a different laptop for the audio part, and then the one I would normally be using for both laptop and putting these links on, so it's taking a little bit longer because I've shifted machines. Right, here's the first little story of strangeness coming from good old UFO Sightings Daily. It wouldn't be the same without at least one story from UFO Sightings Daily. They're an organising person whose name Scott C. Waring always finds something interesting or nonsensical rubbish, in my view, to put up for us to have a look at. But anyway, the latest one is what appears to be a UFO on the moon. I'm sorry, a pyramid on the moon. I do apologise. Popular UFO website, UFO Sightings Daily, keeps trying to prove the existence of aliens and UFOs flying around our Earth and outer space. The website now claims to have spotted a black pyramid on our very own moon. Another interesting fact is that it is a perfect pyramid. It's been found on Google Moon Map. And here's another image of it. It shows what could at first glance looks very much like a pyramid, to be honest with you, but it's just too perfect. It looks like it's probably some kind of anomaly within the stitching of the various images obviously make of a site to put them together to create the overall picture. But it's if it were real, it'd be very convincing, but I'm not too sure it is. But anyway, I'll just read on. A post on website reads, "This black pyramid was found on Google a moon by YouTube user Mexico Geek. The triangle is perfect, meaning all sides appear equal. Now, how they can tell that from that little rather blurred picture, I don't know, but apparently it is. Along one side, we see 4 holes that could be windows or could be ridges. Yeah, okay. The Post by Scott Seawaring. We really should try and see if we can get this guy on the show, you know. I think it'd be quite a fascinating conversation with him. Of UFO Sightings Daily goes on to explain that the construction of the structure on the moon. He adds, buildings on the moon are made of different materials. The most common structures are dark, non-reflective black structures like this. You will see them, but think they are shadows. They are stealth. They're stealth pyramids. The second are a white ceramic reflective structures. You will see white shiny surface. The third are grey metallic buildings. These are usually so small you won't notice them, but they often surround the edges of the black structure. They also have a lot of 90-degree angles, unlike the black structures, okay? There's others too, but these first 3 common ones on Earth's moon. A user even commented on the post, "Awesome. We have so near to disclosure. I can't wait for that day." Some even went on to drag NASA into the entire theory, saying, "Great catch. It would be fun to hear NASA's denial of this." Okay, true or not, such anecdotes are surely food for the UFO hunters and alien enthusiasts. Now, it's an interesting thing. I was having a conversation towards the end of the week online with someone about the JFK assassination and how other more wacky assassinations are, wacky conspiracy theories all drugged into the same net, so that the more serious possible real conspiracies get sort of drowned by a mass of silliness. And I do wonder sometimes that there might be some real genuine UFO phenomena out there, but I think it's all lumped in with this silly nonsense of sort of pyramids on the moon, which is so clearly just a photographic glitch rather than anything real. It's kind of a shame that, you know, it's one of those things. It's the sillier the theory, the more information, the more publicity it gets. More serious concerns about possibility of actual genuine UFOs, as in alien spacecraft or other dimensional craft actually visiting or flying around us, gets kind of swamped out. So, yeah, I just thought it was interesting. What do you think, guys? Is that definitely a pyramid on the moon or not?
It's definitely pyramid shaped
Yes.
from that picture. I'm confused as to how Google Moon can do it, to be honest. I mean, we know how they do it on Earth. They drive around in little vans and motorbikes and
Yeah.
cameras. And
Well, basically, the fact of the matter is NASA has mapped the entire moon's surface, and they're obviously sort of let Google have access. Whether they've paid NASA for access or not, I don't know. I know a recent estimation of the value of Google as a company is over $300 billion, which is terrifyingly massive, and that their search engine system has 2 billion lines of coding in it. 2 billion lines of coding. That's just, it's mind-blowing. So they probably have just paid NASA a few squillion to make use of the imagery. But why they want to do that? It's a conversation I was having with someone in the week. I'm more and more suspicious of Google, you know. I mean, I'm not really a sort of dark, sinister Illuminati conspiracist at all, but Google, to me, they just seem to be this complete power unto themselves. You know, they're multinational. They don't seem to follow any particular government's rules. They, along with other monster companies, are paying very little in tax and figuring out how to get past it. It all worries me a bit, actually. So well, that's that first story.
yeah,
Anyway.
having said that, I do agree with you that we could be missing some proper stuff up there. Got
Absolutely.
it lumped in with all the rubbish.
Yeah, well, speaking of lumped in with all the rubbish, I think my next one is probably lumped in with all the rubbish, but look anyway.
Yes, before we put them to sleep.
Yes. Well, it's all part of the paranormal, Stella, I'm afraid, and some bits I find utterly boring as well, so I won't go into that. Anyway, woman photobombed by alien during selfie on passenger jet on business trip. I'm not going to try and pronounce the Russian woman's name because it's Russian and I'm not good at that sort of thing. Russian woman claims she had decided to take a selfie on the plane and at first had not noticed the humanoid figure a few seats behind.
And the lady's name is Alea.
That's it. Oh, you see, you're trying to show off. You're still
Popitov.
tripled over it.
No, get in there, have a go.
I did Dragon 12, yeah. Anyway, woman was
Podkovitov.
posted a selfie taken on a plane which she claims was a photobombed by an alien. Odessa, whatever her name is, from the city of Kurgan, south-central Russia, Kurgan's Oblast region, said she took the picture during the flight on a whim, but when she posted it on social media, friends pointed out something strange a few seats behind. The young woman was on a business trip and said she was not sure why she suddenly decided to take the selfie, but she said it was not usually something she would do. She said when she shared the snaps, too many S's in that, not good for my teeth, online, she was flooded with comments alerting her to the alien. She said, I uploaded the picture on my social media page, and all the questions and comments hit me. Only after that I realised the bizarre-looking image of a creature behind me. She said the figure was humanoid, looked like a large alien similar to those in Hollywood films. A ray of light can be seen going through its head. There's no sign of eyes in the photo, just a one-piece dark green body, she added. Some people suggested it was not alien, but a ghost. Oh, it's a ghost or an alien on the plane. An alien ghost. The ghost of an alien. Anyway, the size of the unknown passenger seems larger than other travellers. Victor Lunev, I can say that name, aviation expert, commented on the bizarre photo, saying, pilots and stewards are very superstitious and maybe there is a reason. In my experience, I've never encountered anything of that kind. Maybe we could explain it with reference to some basic laws of physics. Well, what do you think? It's intriguing, certainly. My first thought is actually someone's been filling out the Photoshop, but I don't know. It's just the fact that there's a woman almost sitting beside it, whose the top of her head can be seen directly above the woman who was doing the selfie. If you can see what I'm saying, almost directly above her head, there is a large forehead and hair, which seems to be in the same row as what appears to be an alien. But the fact that the line of sunlight goes right through the middle and it looks like a mirror image either side, suggests to me it's some kind of light-based phenomena, as in some kind of internal reflection in a camera phone, because it's obviously very low resolution. And the only other thing that kind of struck me a bit was she has a passing resemblance to Yvette Fielding, I thought.
Della said, how silly, as if it would be taking up a passenger seat.
Yeah, exactly. It would need it himself, would it?
Well, considering how fast they can travel, why would they go on a plane in the first place?
Precisely. It's probably somebody with a blow-up balloon.
Yeah, the fact that nobody else seems to be taking a blind bit of notice of it suggests strongly that it's just a light anomaly or Photoshop fiddling, one or the other. Yeah. But the fact is no one else seems to be taking any notice of it at all. Yeah. So.
Well, if it's Photoshop, they've done a reasonably good job, because there doesn't seem to be any bending around it.
No, I mean, it depends how good you are filling out with that, but it's either that or I think more likely some kind of light anomaly that's occurred through the reflection in the camera. I don't think it's an alien there, but well, you never know, I suppose. Maybe it's just taking a bit of one of those kind of, people like to take holidays to places where they kind of dress up in old Victorian costume, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
maybe the alien's doing exactly that. He's having one of those sort of field trips back in the old days type thing.
Yes, let's just be old and go on a plane. I mean, absolutely. Even if you take the picture as is, on face, she says she can't see in the eyes. I can.
Yeah, me too. Very large, oval, almond eyes. It's a typical grey alien, basically. That's what you're seeing there. But whether you're actually seeing it's just good old simulacra, I don't know. It's interesting. Anyway, just moving on to my next one, which... for me, is a fascinating.
Was that picture story underneath a picture of the actual plane, by the way?
I think so, yes. Just reminded what a UFO is supposed to look like, in case you've forgotten. But here's my next story. This one's a little bit longer, and I'm going to read all of it because it is an area and topic that's fascinated me. As we were saying earlier on, with you and I both watching Oak Island, there's also another program out called Hunting Hitler, which I don't know if you know about, where they trying to investigate claims that Hitler may have survived the bunker at the end of World War II and fled to South America. Well, this particular person, a Nazi expert as he calls himself, says, I have proof Hitler died in the 1960s. The biggest revelation is an apparently authenticated, secret German document which lists Hitler as one of the passengers evacuated by a plane from Austria to Barcelona on the 26th of April 1945. Although official history contends Hitler committed suicide with his newlywed wife, Eva Braun, on the 30th of 1945, their corpses were buried by others in the Berlin bunker. Abel Basti claims proof of the history is a fabrication. Okay. According to Basti, meticulous research, the leader According to Basti's meticulous research, a leader of the Third Reich spent his last years as an art dealer and had facial plastic surgery to change his appearance. Now, directly above it is apparently a painting. Now, I've seen this as a photograph, not as a painting previously, depicting Hitler in the 1960s. Now, about a third of his face, his forehead, is covered by a handkerchief for some bizarre reason, and whilst there's vague sort of proportions of the face suggest it could be an old Hitler, other parts don't make any sense. The very oddly bulbous nose and the very, very large ears suggest to me that it could be just anybody, really. I don't think it's Hitler at all. And as far as I'm aware, Hitler did not have a cleft chin, which this person in this picture, stroke painting, actually has. Anyway, these are just two of the astounding revelations that respected Argentine journalist and historian Abel Basti documents in his book Hitler's Exile. Time magazine announces Hitler's death in 1945. While the book was a runaway bestseller across South America, it's been suppressed in the United States and the Russian Federation. Those two countries still maintain that Germany's Führer committed suicide during the last days of World War II. Now, interestingly, and I want to put this in here, and I've mentioned this before, I know for a fact that Stalin actually ordered that the rumour myth that Hitler was still alive was to be kept alive in order for them to maintain their very iron grip on Eastern Europe and East Germany immediately after the war. So he used it as a political device. And I do often wonder that some of these stories and ideas of Hitler surviving World War II is all part of that misinformation by Stalin and his cohorts that has been taken a little bit too far. Anyway, I shall continue reading this. World newspapers reported Hitler dead. Were they wrong? Question mark. The claim that Hitler and some high-ranking Staatsstaffel, never say that, or SS officers escaped Germany and fled to South America is not new. Neil Nikandrov observed, Strategic Cultural Foundation, all the leaders of the Third Reich fled to Latin America. Now, we know that's patently nonsense because most of those senior people, of course, were captured and a lot of them committed suicide before being taken to the Nuremberg trials. People like Heinrich Himmler was in British hands when he committed suicide. There was no two ways about it. That was Himmler that killed himself, and of course Göring killed himself just at the beginning of the trials. So that's certainly not true to say they all fled. Anyway, in this well-documented The Hitler Survival Myth, Donald McHale identifies the earliest source of the myth of Hitler's escape to be to the southern hemisphere as an unexpected surrender of a German submarine early 45 at Mar del Plata, Argentina. Several Buenos Aires newspapers, in defiance of the Argentine Navy's statements, said that the rubber boats had been seen landing from it, and other submarines were spotted in the area. Now, I know that the program I was referring to earlier on has actually claimed to have found a sunken U-boat off the coast of Argentina, though they're having trouble relocating it, so that's probably still in the workings of the program. Anyway, in July 16, 1945, Chicago Times reports Hitler fled to South America. Hitler in Argentina tale first surfaced in the book back in 1947. I'm not going to try and pronounce the Hungarian advertiser, witnessed the arrival of the U-530 and saw its crew disembarking. He had heard that the destination was the German Antarctica, and mistakenly made the supposition that Hitler had escaped to Antarctica and published the book Hitler is Alive. He speaks about the possible location of Hitler in Queen Maud's properties. Opposite the Queen Maud properties is a place, not Queen Maud. Opposite the Weddell Sea, and then renamed New Schwabenland when the area was explored in 1938-39 by the German expedition led by Captain Richter. Brick from wall of Nazi complex in Patagonia. Szabo made the wrong assumption. This is the guy who's now talking, obviously, the book that we're talking about is talking about other people's theories about it. When he said he had read the book by Professor Hugo Fernandez Ortesio, published in 1940, Nazis in Uruguay, he would have discovered that there were actually plans referring to the German Antarctica, but there was nothing but the term they used for the Patagonia, and that this information had been made public in New York in 1939. Now, the fact is that there is a number of quite large communities, German communities, in South America following the end of the First World War, where numbers left the rather decimated Germany to try and begin new lives in South America. So there are a number of communities in South America already in the 1930s that were actually doing rather well for themselves. And I think a lot of the time people have kind of mixed up the idea of the already existing German communities with new communities being formed post-World War II, which included Nazi sympathisers and Nazi officers who'd escaped, when in actual fact these groups already existed. These German enclaves in South America already supported the Nazi Germany, and there were buildings with swastikas and the like all over parts of Argentina in particular. So this stuff was already in place, and I think people are using that as a proof, if you like, that Hitler somehow survived and escaped down there. I'm not going to read the whole rest of it, because it does go on quite a long time, but essentially there's nothing new to these claims, and I do feel that much of it is still based on the notion, put forward by the Soviets and Stalin post-World War II, that Hitler was still alive in order to keep their tight control over Eastern Europe. And again, the mixing in the idea that, probably some high-ranking Nazis did escape Germany towards the end of the war and did fled to the already existing enclaves in South America, but it doesn't prove that any one of them was actually Hitler. I mean, we had a conversation, obviously, about a photograph a few weeks back that supposedly showed Hitler with his young South American bride, which he would have put him in his 90s at that point. Whereas, I mean, it's well documented that Hitler was very ill by the end of 1945. He would not have survived more than 5 years anyway because of his poor health. So the idea he survived into the 1960s is somewhat ludicrous, but it's one of those rumours and stories that just continue to persist, partly by sort of rather crazy historians, partly unfortunately by people who are neo-Nazi, who want to believe their glorious leader survived World War II, and partly by just misinformation, really. So I thought it was an interesting story, but with me long rambling there, guys, what do you think?
I've no doubt that some serving German high-ranking officers did make it out. I personally doubt Hitler did. Yes, I mean,
I find it beyond belief that he survived to escape. Certainly, I mean, we know people like Joseph Mengele, probably the most notorious Nazi scientist, stroke doctor, stroke butcher. Survived and lived out there until a ripe old age. Yeah. Martin Bormann, another senior Nazi official, disappeared off the face of the earth, but long certainly believed to have lived out a full life down in South America. So these are some of the much more high-ranking officers of the Nazi movement, but Hitler himself, I can't see it. As I say, his health was pretty poor by 1945 anyway, so he wouldn't have survived more than a few years, even if he'd won the war. You know, his health was pretty awful after the attempted assassination in 1944. I mean, he was suffering from Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. He was in constant pain from rotting teeth. All the things you could think of were going wrong, thankfully.
Don't talk about teeth at the moment.
Yeah, yes, no.
Well, is that you done, Mr. Andy?
No, I have one more story.
Okay.
This one is especially for Christmas, which I came across doing my research and thought, this is interesting. Experts reconstruct 3D face of Jesus. This is how he looked. This is how he would... This is how he looked like. That's terrible English, isn't it? This is how he looked like. Anyway, forget what you think you know about Jesus' looked like, because in all probability you're wrong. A group of medical experts have got together to recreate what they actually think he looked like by studying Semite skulls. And Semite, of course, are people of that particular region of the world. Retired medical artist Richard Neve came up with the illustration showing black curly hair, a tan complexion and a wide face. It is believed to bear more of a resemblance to what Middle Eastern Jews look like, and is in what is now southern Israel. Popular mechanics said that Dr. Neve used forensic anthropology as well as information he gathered from the Bible to get a more accurate view. And that's what it shows. He also used 3D reconstruction to create slices of the skull, and calculate what the skin should look like. They also built a cast of a skull which helped them form a basis for muscle tissue. But the eyes and hair involved is a bit of guesswork. It was decided using the Bible that Jesus had short hair. Paul wrote, "If a man has long hair, it is a disgrace to him," therefore suggesting he had short hair. That contradicts most depictions of Jesus which have been created since then. And they've got a nice picture of Robert Powell doing his Jesus impression from Jesus of Nazareth series that was on when I was many years ago, in the 80s, I think.
And a very good job of it he did.
Yes, that was actually, I remember watching it, I think this is rather good. And it was the thing that stood out more than anything, of course, was his very pale blue eyes, which would be extremely rare for that part of the world at that time. But the image that you see is kind of a more generic kind of a Neanderthal kind of look with quite a large nose and big thick eyebrows and ears. You know, it's pure guesswork, basically, because first and foremost, I don't think he ever existed, but even if he did, it's total guesswork. I mean, there's no real description in the Bible of how he might have appeared or what he was doing for the first 30 years of his life, and he gets born and then just vanishes and appears out of the blue and he's 33 years old, etc., etc. But yeah, so I thought as it was Christmas, that would be a nice little story to finish off with.
But
I just can't believe the terrible, sorry, just to finish off this, the awful grammar at the start of this. I'll read it again. Experts reconstruct 3D face of Jesus, full stop. This is how he looked like.
yeah.
What kind of writing is that?
It looks like his name should be Pedro or
Yeah.
Jose
Yeah.
It does,
instead of Jesus.
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 Yep.
Yes.
But having said that, he is more likely to look like that than the very European image that we're,
Oh,
that we're given.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's more. What's his name? Powell.
Yeah.
What was his name? I can't think of his name now.
Robert Powell.
Robert Powell in
Yeah.
Jesus of Nazareth.
Interestingly enough, going back to my previous story, one of the things that was put forward by not so much specifically by the Nazis, but it was a kind of a general thing in the late 1900s, 1800s rather. Fun, nothing too serious. We have early 1900s in Central Europe was what's called the Aryan Christ. One of the things that made Jesus stand out was that he did have blonde hair and blue eyes and pale skin and an otherwise sort of more coloured world, should we say. That was one of their thinking, that he couldn't possibly be Jewish. He must be something spectacularly strange and different. He had to have blonde hair and blue eyes and pale skin,
But,
which is absolute rubbish, of course.
But as Della says, saying that Jesus never really existed is not very Christmas-like, is it, Andy?
No, but then Christmas is a pagan festival. It belongs to us pagans. You Christian types nicked it from us a long time ago and tried to make it your own, but it's our festival.
And Jesus' birthday is actually in June or July.
Yes.
Well, that would be if he was born, of course, which I don't think he ever was, but that's another story.
No, he was.
No, he wasn't.
He was, but he's not the man that people portray. It was just a bit like Mohammed.
He was a prophet.
He was a prophet.
End of.
Yeah, no, it didn't exist. Jesus of Nazareth is his name, yeah? Check out when Nazareth came into existence.
I haven't got a clue whether
300
Jesus of Nazareth is his
years
name.
after Jesus was supposed to have been alive. When Jesus was alive, there was no place called Nazareth.
I don't
So
know
that's
whether
good.
his name was Jesus of Nazareth.
No, he's supposed to be from Nazareth. That's what
Yeah,
the Bible
that's a
says.
later thing.
But there's no Nazareth. It
According
didn't
to the
exist.
Bible, yes.
I'm not going to argue on gospel. I'm sorry. Thank you, Andy.
Well, just to wind Andy up a little bit more, have a look at that one, Andy.
What you found? Oh my
A
God.
former Illuminati insider, Carol Hamlet, exposes the shocking truth that the Illuminati is a Satanist organisation who answers to Lucifer.
Of course it
Yeah.
is. Absolutely.
Carolyn
Yeah.
reveals how the elite are setting the stage for the Antichrist to take over of the New World Order. She discusses mind control, child abuse, satanic rituals, and reveals how the Illuminati really feel about Jesus Christ. She says that the ultimate goal is to enslave humanity and eventually the destruction of the human race. According to Carolyn, the fallen angels are the masters of the conspiracy and lead deceived humans into following a plan designed to lead to the demise of mankind.
It gets even better if you scroll down. There's a post from someone called Kim Lawrence. I just heard that Barbara Bush is the daughter of Aleister Crowley. Which would make sense why she wears the trousers in the Bush household. That's just absolute nonsense.
Yeah. I will say that I haven't bothered to listen to the leading video there, but it sounds very much like a Christian answer to it, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's one of those things. It's one of those websites that you basically, from what I can see, either A, you write what you like and get it posted, like, I forget the name of that website now. Before it's news, everyone often used to go on about strange reports of weird stuff going on before it's news. And of course, it was actually you write stories yourself, basically, and people actually had to have little competitions. So you could write the silliest story and get it published on there. So yeah. Oh, I've just had a message from Ron, one of our listeners, who obviously missed the start of the show because he said, "Have you seen this?" to me, all about the sword you just talked about. So yes, Rich rather, not Ron. Rich Moody. I think Ron Moody.
Yeah. I mean, common sense tells you, just looking at that, if the Illuminati do exist, and they are everything that people say they are, she would not be alive to tell anybody.
Absolutely. That's the biggest problem with, unfortunately, people who talk of conspiracies like this, with active and ongoing conspiracies, that if it's true, why are they letting you go out and say all these things? If you're a whistleblower, you're going to get your head blown off. So no, yes, that's the perennial problem with conspiracy theorists. If they're actually onto something, then they're not going to be around. They're not going to be allowed to say these things in public because they're threatening these big, powerful organisations. Of course they can snuff people out at will. And then you got some conspiracy theorists tell us about other people who've been killed off by these organisations, but then why haven't you been? So it does beg the question, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know about it, and you're telling everybody, so why are you still breathing?
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
I mean, we can understand whistleblowers from the government and companies and stuff like that, but when you're talking about something that's supposed to be as powerful and secretive as the Illuminati, who... I won't say is this because I've got no proof one way or the other, although there are loads of stories and work it out for yourself. You're definitely not going to be around to tell everybody.
Exactly.
I'm sorry,
exactly.
It's not going to happen.
It's like people going about, one of our regular sort of comings onto the shows person used to go on about the Freemasons all the time. And I used to groan because, I've got 2 brothers-in-law and a nephew are all Freemasons, and to tell you the street, it's a glorified drinking club, basically. They get together every couple of weeks and sit down and have a chat about stuff. They have big dinners and party weekenders. They raise a vast amount of money for charity. That's one of the things that people don't necessarily know about them. But they're just a bunch of pals get together, There's no real power there. You make connections and, and you discuss stuff, and maybe you might throw a bit of business your direction. But that's it, They're not some dark world conspiracy descended from the Templars. Most of them will never bleeding clue what the Templars were, much less be worshipping any kind of gods or demons or supernatural power.
Yeah,
it does make me laugh.
Our son was a member as well, but your conspiracy theorists would just say, well, it's the inner circle that know all that and hold the power.
Of course it is. That's it. They have to because you say that, they all say it's the Freemasons. I'll say, well, hang on, I know some Freemasons, and they'll say the thing you just said. Well, it's the inner circle of the Freemasons. It's the 3rd degree Master Mason people. And I'll say, well, one of my brothers-in-law is a 3rd degree Master Mason, lodge leader, if you like. Oh, well, then in case it's the higher authority, the ones up in the central command. Oh, yeah, all right. They'll keep moving it further and further back. To say, well, it can't be because you can't be right, and I must be right because I've read all this stuff about them that's been written by people who agree with me anyway. So you can have the same views. But the other thing I just wanted to mention, those that know, I've written a book on Enochian magic, which is finally available from my publisher, Ian Sophia Press. I shall put a link on the chat room because it's now finally available, and I am much relieved. I'm now working on my next book on runes. So
Hey,
Did you say runes?
Yes, R-U-N-E-S.
Right.
Runes.
Okay.
of the Nordic variety, I take it.
Yes.
Okay.
Germanic runes, indeed.
Right, well, that's about it for tonight's show. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we like to enjoy your company again next week from 8 p.m. on www.ktpf.co.uk. What are you up to this week, Andy?
Well, obviously I'm working on our show for next week, and as you know, we've been talking about it, I'm going to be doing my own little music show as well as you're of course doing your 1950s style sort of bebop type music, I think, which is stuff I'd rather listen to nails on the blackboard than listen to that kind of music, I have to say.
It's not just 1950s, it's rock and roll from 1950s top to present day. And it's called The Saturday Hop, and it's on Worsley Radio.
There you go.
It started yesterday, and I was told it had 19 listeners, which was a good rating for my first show.
Excellent.
And it's also going on to a few other shows.
And it's also being broadcast in California, New Jersey, and Ontario.
Oh, excuse me.
Amongst others.
Well, my show is going to be on electronic music. I mean proper good electronic stuff like Tangerine Dream, Jean-Michel Jarre, to name a few. Not sort of pop music, electronic stuff, but real kind of electronica, which I think I'm still doing a Monday night slot. I'm not entirely sure what Ray's decided, but that will be something I'm going to be working on the next few days. Of course, it's Christmas in a few days' time, which doesn't feel like it at all here, because it's lovely and mild, which is good news because our boiler's broken down, so we are currently without heating or hot water, but it should be fixed by tomorrow. But other than that, the usual, seeing a few clients, and then taking a week off. I don't usually work between Christmas and New Year because there's just no point. And that's about it, really. So I'm working on the graphics for my rune book because there's quite a lot of imagery in it, and it's all to do with linking runes to other things. And whilst the writing part's complete, I want to actually improve the graphics, because one of the issues I had with Libra Corons on my first book is that some of the imagery I produced quite a long time ago, and it's relatively low resolution and needed to be redrawn for a higher quality for printing, which is what's really slowed the book down to some degree. But yeah, so that's my week. What are you guys up to? Anything exciting?
Well, unfortunately, Steve brought Christmas to the house a little bit early, so I'm feeling a little bit bored at the moment and can't wait for it to come.
Oh, no, me too. Can't stand this rubbish.
It seems to have dragged ever since we put the decorations up, but never mind. But apart from doing a couple of more shows to keep our Worsley radio and the rest of them in line ready so that I'm in front for the new year. I'm not doing anything apart from getting the last bits of shopping and then hopefully enjoying Christmas. So that's about it. And on the subject of Christmas, we'd like to all wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And thank you for your support in 2015 and previously. Isn't that right, Steve?
It is indeed.
Mm-hmm.
It is indeed.
But over to you, Steve.
Yes, we would like to thank you all for listening to the KTPF Community Talk Show, which is supported by Phenomenal Magazine and Beyond Parazine.
Yes, and all that's left to say, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from her.
And good night from me.
So until next time, all that's left to say is
Keep the
paranormal friendly.
Good night and God
Good night.
bless.
This is where it's at.
From ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night, visit our ghost store and next time you might be able to show what just gave you a fright.
So for all of your investigation needs, with over 100 products in stock waiting for dispatch within 24 hours, you need to visit theukghoststore.com.